Hey guys, it's Adam from Loose Pixel, and today I'm going to talk about something personal. Personal to me, and very potentially something personal to you. And it might be a bit of a difficult subject, which is why I want to preface what I'm going to share with you today by mentioning a few very important things. Number one, I am not a licensed therapist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not professionally trained to offer therapy. I'm professionally trained to teach art, which is what I do for a living. That's the first thing. However, I'm going to go there today. I'm going to go into an emotionally heavy place because of the life experiences that I've had and the things I've had to navigate throughout the course of my career and my personal life that I feel an obligation to share with you. However, I do feel that I'm responsible enough that if I do cross over that line, where I feel where things that I'm talking about are things that can and or have impacted the quality of your life, I'm going to let you know when I cross over that line and when it might be a good opportunity for you to seek therapy. And if I can be a catalyst to help you get the help that you need, then I feel like I've done you a great service. But I'm not going to offer you that service. I'm going to let the professional do that. But I will be sharing some of my own life's wisdom because I've been through some shit, and I think that you deserve to hear that too, being a fellow artist and being somebody who might be struggling with similar issues yourself. Before I start, however, I'm going to be mentioning at the beginning of my videos, you can skip ahead, there's a timeline on the bottom there. You can skip ahead, but I've learned recently that a lot of people don't know what kind of content I put out. I even had artists that signed up for my mentorship that recently told me, I didn't know you were still doing art talks like this. I thought you were doing art tech reviews because that's all that YouTube pushes on me. And I was like, And in my live streams, people didn't know that I offered a mentorship online. I don't push that on people all the time. And if you don't, then you don't even know what I'm producing. And the same applies to a lot of the artists out there that I follow. I'll think, Jesus, they haven't put anything out in months. And I go on their channel and check it out, and they've put out 3 videos that week, which is very frustrating to me. So I'm going to try not to make this too long-winded. I have 4 different types of content that I put out regularly. Art talks. You're listening to one right now. Talking head videos where we dig deep into professional, personal, technical, art-related subjects, things that can impact your life and your career. Number 2, if you want something a little bit more relaxed, long form where you can zone out and paint to, I have a whole playlist of Painter's Hollow videos. There's playlists for all of these, by the way, so you can just go and click on your favorite playlist. Number 3, dozens and dozens and dozens of art tech reviews for digital artists. Every brand imaginable, I cover it all. Okay? And lastly, if you just want to hang out, have fun, and just chat, I also been live streaming gaming lately. Usually Souls games as of late, but I just to hang out with the community when I have some off time, I jump online spontaneously and shoot the shit, and we have great conversations, and we play games, and you listen to me complain that this level is unfair. Last but not least, of course, I have an online art mentorship that I've been running for the last 12 years, Lucid Pixel. You can go to lucidpixel.com, and I highly recommend signing up for the mailing list, no spam, because if you're interested in knowing about early openings, which I have happen all the time, I let the mailing list know first, and it's a first come, first serve situation. And I happen to have some early openings right now if you're interested. So if you are, get in touch with me right away. Do not delay. What do I want to talk about today that's so personal? Well, I'm going to start with myself, give you a little bit of backstory, and then highlight that with an irony. My professional career spans back over 25 years at this point. I've worked in gaming, I've worked in film, I've worked in trading cards, I've been a concept artist, illustrator, junior and senior. I've worked as a teacher in the public school system. I've kind of done it all. And then around 12, 13 years ago, after teaching in public schools in animation and illustration, I started my online art mentorship, and it's been going strong for the last 12 years. And in a lot of these cases, it was big companies that work on big projects. However, throughout a very long period in my career, well into my 20s and 30s, and even all the way up almost into my 40s, I felt like a total fraud. Even though I was called director and I was making a decent salary and people called me sir and I was having lunch with executives and all that kind of shit. Or even though I had people telling me how much they appreciated what I was doing, and I never really heard any complaints from anybody that I sucked at anything, I felt like a fraud. In fact, I spent a long period of my career, whenever something good would happen with my channel, with my school, with any business or any endeavor that I was taking on, that I had this feeling of impending doom that one day I was going to be exposed for the fake that I am. I never, ever truly felt like my success was real. It always felt fake. And one must ask, where does that come from? Furthermore, when I think about the hundreds of artists that I've had very personal conversations with, my students, friends, etc., what I felt was very, very common. Now, just to mention something right off the bat, I'm a grown man now, and I've overcome a lot of this stuff, and I'm in a very healthy, happy place. That's why I'm sharing this with you. I'm not trauma dumping on you. I'm setting the stage for a reality that I had to navigate. Every single time that I had some success in my life, there was a little voice in my head that would tell me, it's not what you think it is. It's not as good as you think it is. This is fickle, it's fragile, it's not going to last long. You're going to be broke again. And interestingly, despite the fact that the good experiences, the successes that I had in my career outweighed the failures fairly well, it was the failures that my brain stuck to and remembered and ruminated, overthought for years and years and years. That was my truth, not the good stuff. And I turn that question to you. Where are you in your artistic journey, professionally, personally, technically? And what is your relationship with success and failure? Are you the type of person who just, does their best, works hard, and hopefully, things will work out for you, but you have a generally positive attitude about stuff? Or do you feel like no matter how hard you try, you're never going to make it? No matter what you do, you're always going to be a failure. And even when you succeed, maybe you already have succeeded. Maybe you've already done some really great jobs and you've got hired to work for some really cool projects, but you still feel like your career is a sham. I want to address that today, because that might be coming from somewhere. And without knowledge of where these emotions come from, where these feelings come from, where this inner dialogue comes from, you can suffer your entire life. You can carry that burden with you for decades and decades and decades. I know people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that are still running from ghosts, because they've never had a chance to either sit down with a therapist and talk about it, and or do some soul searching, analyze their life, and see where the problem stems. So what was going on with me, and when did it change? What was the tipping point that led to me finding a path to healing and to finding a healthier perspective on myself and my life and my career? It started when I was a father, but it really clicked for me when I became a father of older kids. And the reason being is, if you think about the path of your life, we spend the majority of our early life depending on somebody outside of ourselves for our perspective, for our perspective on ourselves. A parent, a guardian, a sibling, a role model, etc., depending on who you look up to. We look outside of ourselves for praise. We look outside of ourselves for validation. We look outside of ourselves for advice, feedback on who we are. And hopefully, the person that we're getting that feedback from is somebody who has a balanced and healthy perspective. But very often, it's not. And that feedback that you're getting from somebody is coming from an immature, selfish, and in some rare cases, even vindictive or intentionally hurtful place. Not always, but sometimes there as well. But more often than not, if that feedback, if that role model in your life is feeding you a negative mindset for their own immature reasons, that sets a precedent. That programs your brain at a very, very early phase. And it can take decades and sometimes even a person's entire life to decode that and find a new sense of balance, redefine the norms to themselves. When I became a dad, but furthermore, when I became a father of older kids, I had been dedicating myself to the upbringing of my 3 kids up until that point. And I continue to, of course. But because they were a little bit more grown up, as they get older, as they become teens and then 20s and stuff like that, your focus can start reshifting towards yourself. And you can reflect on the type of parent that you are, the type of upbringing that you've worked hard to share with your children. But you can also start reflecting on your own upbringing in comparison to the type of parent that you are. And when I did that, I started to look back at and observe how I was being treated by somebody that I really looked up to, far more objectively, not from the perspective of a dependent or from a child of theirs, but from the perspective of a parent. And it wasn't until that point that I remember having a conversation with this person, and I actively listened to the words that they were sharing with me. I was on a drive on my way to Ottawa because I was working on a Disney show at the time, and I was actually on the road, on the highway. And I'm listening to this person talking to me, somebody I've known my entire life, listening to what they're saying to me. And then I took the words that they said to me, and I imagined myself aiming it at my kids. Taking those words and aiming it at my children, saying that, having those words come out of my mouth. And the minute I did that, I realized something. If I was talking that way to my kids, I was abusing them. Point blank. I would be abusing them. For me to say those words to my kids would be a deliberate act of abuse to my children, verbal abuse. Using your words to diminish another person's feeling of self-worth. Using your words to fill that person who depends on you, who relies on you. To make that person feel like less of a person, to diminish their accomplishments, to make them question their self-worth is an act of abuse, in my opinion. And that was the beginning of the end of that relationship with that person. I was so upset, I had to remember I was driving. Because if I got any angrier, I would have started swerving off the road. I was so upset by that. And I remember as I'm hearing that, I'm literally seeing "Welcome to Ontario." I'm seeing that sign on the highway. I was crossing the border at that very time when it clicked, when I had that realization. And up until that point, I'm in my early 40s. I'm making that realization for the first time. And once I made that realization, I could start decoding my entire past and start remembering and writing. I've written a lot. Writing in my journal these experiences, kind of replaying it through my head, remembering this language, remembering these words, remembering these thoughts and feelings. And when I read through it, I went, Jesus Christ, I've put up with a lot of shit for a long time. So where do you come into this picture, and what insights can you gain from the story that I'm sharing with you right now? Well, let me put you in the perspective, if you're not old enough yet to have had this experience yet, or if you choose not to have this experience. When you're young, you are dependent on an external force. Your personal value is usually dictated from somebody outside of yourself. You go from analyzing the world from an outside perspective to becoming the outside perspective for somebody who depends on you. So there's a shift of priority in you. Hopefully. But for many parents out there, for many adults who end up finding themselves being parents, they either choose not to or are just flat out incapable of making that shift. Everything remains about themselves, despite the fact that there's somebody else who's depending on them, because they don't have the maturity or the strength of mind to do that. So instead of shifting their focus and seeing and listening to and learning and valuing the qualities of their own child or that person who's dependent on them, it's still about themselves. They do not see their child for who they are, for their unique qualities. They see their child as a reflection of themselves. Meaning that for you to be validated in their eyes, you need to present to them qualities that they deem are good, not qualities that you deem are good. They'll never validate what you do and what you feel is right and the lifestyle that you choose to live. They'll only praise you when you do things that they deem are valuable. As such, you grow up with this feeling like you can never trust your own feelings. Point blank. You can't trust them because you haven't received that validation. Nobody's ever turned to you and say, I like what you're doing. I really love your taste. I love your choice in music. You know what? If you feel that this is the career path you want to take, I'll support you the best way I can. Confided you're not doing anything irresponsible that can get you hurt, right? Never underestimate the power of a parent who can turn to the kid and say, I trust you. Being able to trust your kids is a very, very powerful gift you can offer your children. Trust their opinion, trust their feelings, trust their life choices, trust their partners in life. Confided the partner's not a hurtful partner. But without that, you can spend your entire life feeling like you can never know, you can never be certain in yourself if you're doing the right thing or not. And in a particularly toxic parent, they won't only not value you, but they'll undermine you. They'll put you down. They'll insult you. Whenever you do have some kind of a success, they'll gaslight you into believing that it's not, that you think it's great, but it's not. You think this is you're a success, but really you sound like a loser. Or whatever bullshit they try to spew. And you compound that over the period of decades and decades, listening to somebody like that, that becomes the norm in your brain. This becomes your reality. Which is why people in abusive situations like that end up finding partners who replicate the same thing. I found myself getting into very toxic relationships with very toxic people because the red flags never went up for me. To me, their imbalanced and unhealthy behavior was stuff I grew up with. It was stuff I was very, very accustomed to. So I thought it was normal. I thought it was just an interesting, fun dynamic. It wasn't an interesting, fun dynamic. It was an unhealthy relationship. It was a toxic relationship. But I didn't recognize toxicity until much later on in my life. In fact, when I'd meet somebody who was not toxic, somebody who wasn't off in some way or another, I regarded that as they were boring. They were uninteresting. We didn't have chemistry. It didn't click. No, they just weren't hurtful, vindictive, toxic, imbalanced people. And my gauge of normalcy was completely all off because that's what I was raised in. That was the tornado. That was the chaos I grew up in. And there's a very good likelihood that if you have a lot of these doubt issues, that might be something to look into. And that's where I remind you, if you struggle with this, and if this does impact the quality of your life, if you have crippling self-doubt, crippling imposter syndrome, if you're somebody who's really hard on themselves and go through very, very hard emotional episodes, be them anger or sadness or depression or anxiety, that's where a therapist comes in. And don't underestimate the power of great therapy. Never underestimate. I've had a few experiences in my life that within hours transformed my headspace that I benefit from to this day. Shout out to my dear friend Marlene, okay, who offered me a perspective on my life, who unlocked a pattern in my thinking that transformed me permanently, that I benefit from her guidance to this day. A positive role model in my life. Okay? So don't underestimate the power of a good force in your life. And maybe if you think about what I'm sharing with you right now, if you feel very grateful for this insight that I'm offering you right now, and maybe it's making you analyze your own life and give you pause. Well, I'm playing a positive role in your life. I'm offering you some responsible advice and offering you the guidance to go and seek the right type of help. If you were raised in an environment where you were undermined or you felt like your identity, your choices were always put down because your parent, your role model, your guardian undermined everything that you did and or didn't validate what you did unless it was their values and not your values, then start doing some of this. Start jotting these things down. Visualize. Look at your thoughts on paper. I can't stress enough the power of that. You can type it. I like to use a handwritten journal. Something slows me down and helps with my thoughts when I'm writing traditionally. You do you. Now, that said, there's another type of parenting that is not necessarily as selfish and malicious necessarily, but can do more harm than good for innocent reasons. And that can be a parent that overpraises you. That can be a problem too. Usually it's because the parent loves you and wants the best for you and wants you to feel good about yourself, but does too much of that, and sometimes when it's not necessarily warranted. They might tell you that you're perfect, that your art is fantastic, that everything you do is fantastic, that your music is beautiful, that your singing voice is gorgeous, that blah, 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 blah. The reason you feel off about it is because their praise doesn't align with your reality. Confided you're not going through something like depression or some other condition that can warp your sense of self. The way you can tell that this might be happening to you is when they say something really, really nice to you. It sounds great, but it doesn't feel great. It feels off. Now, that praise that you're receiving, in the nicest sense of the word, is just a parent that's being too effing nice to you, or a friend that's being too nice to you. In the worst case scenario, it could be love bombing. And love bombing is a manipulation. That's a very, very manipulative thing to do. It's not natural to deify somebody when you meet them, or profess your love to them or your devotion to them when you don't even fucking know them yet, right? That's over the top. And that does happen. That can be a manipulative tactic of a very, very toxic person. That's kind of a worst case scenario, but otherwise you're just dealing with a parent that's just being too nice. And if that's the case, you say thank you, but you know what? I don't quite feel like I'm ready yet, but you're very sweet for saying that. In a perfect world, the relationship that you have with a parent or a guardian or a role model in your life is a balanced one. Meaning, they praise you when you do something great, and they tell you when they feel you're not. And you feel that the feedback that they're bringing you feels honest, but doesn't feel over the top. And you feel ultimately aligns with a reality within you. It makes sense to you and brings your life value. It just brings your life value. It's not something that feels like they're faking it, they're love bombing you, or they're delusional. It aligns with your reality. But sadly, too many of us have not grown up with perfectly balanced parents or perfectly balanced guardians, because just because a person becomes a parent doesn't mean they instantly mature emotionally. There are many emotionally immature parents or guardians or friends out there, and you need to learn as a human being how to make that distinction. And a very good way to make that distinction, a good radar you can use to make that distinction, is listen to your gut, listen to your feelings, know yourself. I got this tattoo on my arm, by the way, within a month of that epiphany. Because it was within a month of that epiphany that I had that turning point when I was driving to Ottawa and I had that conversation, that I realized one of the most important things, the most important lessons in life, and that is you need to be able to know who you are. You need to be able to identify with your reality, with your values, with your morals, with your desires. Because you can spend your entire life with everything and feel like you have nothing. Or you can spend your life with nothing, but still feel like you have everything because you have yourself, because you have a healthy relationship with yourself. And as such, you can find, if you so choose, a partner in life that aligns well with that healthy sense of self and helps to encourage and empower that and nurture it. And you can offer that to them too. Your friendships improve, your business relationships improve, your love life improves, and most importantly, your relationship with yourself improves. I'm going to mention one more thing before I let you go today. And that's a very important reality about the nature of your life, my fellow artist. And that's the fact that throughout my 25-year professional career and my 50 years on this planet being an artist, I can say with absolute confidence that an art career is not linear. An art career is almost never what you plan. As an artist, you have to learn to adapt. You have to learn to go with the flow. Technology changes, the world changes, trends change, but most importantly, you change over time. I spent the early phase of my life wanting to be a Disney cartoonist. Now I'm a dark fantasy illustrator who teaches. I didn't seek a teaching job. Teaching found me. I went to UB campus to take a course in game design because I felt I needed to improve my skills, to walk into a completely empty school because there weren't any classes being taught. There was one administrator in the building at the time. I sat down with her. She looks at my work and says, "Have you ever considered teaching?" I was asking her about taking a course. She asked me if I wanted to teach. I said, "No, not really." She goes, "Because your art's pretty good. There's a school looking for an animation teacher." I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Do you know anything about animation?" I said, "I have a degree in animation." She goes, "Okay, well, follow me." The rest is history. I ended up teaching and having one of the greatest jobs I ever had, teaching at a college in animation and illustration. And I subsequently ended up starting my own online school, Lucid Pixel. Go to lucidpixel.com, shameless plug. Okay? Started that 12 years ago, and it's the love of my life. And I want to do this till I'm 150 years old. I love every day that I get to sit down with an artist, a passionate artist student, and share everything that I know. But that career found me. And I'm listening to my daughter now, discovering her calling too. She never in a million years would have thought about it. But the minute she did, her and everybody she knows went, "Jesus, yeah, that's the perfect job for you. You're perfect for that." She never planned it. And the same thing applies to so many artists that I work with, that I get a chance to sit down with. Art finds you. You have to keep an open mind. Don't expect everything to go exactly the way you want it to. To be an artist means to be adaptable. It means to be creative, not only with your art, but with your career as well. So if things aren't going exactly the way you want them to, don't be so hard on yourself. Look at your life objectively and ask yourself the question, this might not be exactly where I want to be, but how do I feel about where I am? You're going to find yourself in many different places throughout your career, but remember this important quote. Where you are does not define who you are. Okay? With that said, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.